Senator from the 13th has a good-looking jacket on today. Ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. Chair would like to recognize the distinguished and ready-to-go Rules Chairman from the 53rd District.
Good morning, Mr. President. It is a good day, and we're ready to go. And you said a well-oiled machine. I had an oil change yesterday, so I feel less squeaky.
I didn't know you had to change the oil on a horse and buggy.
That's a good one. I don't think that's funny, though, but that's a good one. Moment in time in history. In 1993, Eric Clapton, a big winner of the Grammys, taking 3 awards for his unplugged version of the rock legend Layla, which the original version had Dwayne Allman playing lead all the way through. It's a great song. National Chili Day today, and also the senator from the 7th told me it's National Dance Day, and he's going to do a break dance performance a little later. Mr. President, the journal has been read and found to be correct.
Speaking of horses, the senator from the 4th, who is very knowledgeable of horses, told me that if you were to get a horse, he'd send you a Clydesdale. That'd be the best fit horse for you. Does that sound about right? I think it's hilarious. That's Senator from the 4th's words, not mine. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them up to the secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 539 by Senators Hatchett of the 50th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 3 of Chapter 11 of Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to wiretapping, eavesdropping, surveillance, and related offenses.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 540 by Senators James of the 35th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance generally so as to provide for coverage of dental care provided
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 541 by Senators Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 16 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to health of students in elementary and secondary education.
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 542 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to limit the competitive emerging communications technologies
Regulated Industries.
Senate Bill 543 by Senators Halpern of the 39th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 51 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to wrongful death so as to provide that a parent who is determined to be responsible for the homicide.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 544 by Senators Halpern of the 39th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to state flag, seal, and other symbols.
Veterans.
Senate Bill 545 by Senators Halpern of the 39th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to competencies and core curriculum so as to provide
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 546 by Senators Dugan of the 30th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act relating to the Board of Education and School Superintendent of the Carroll County School District.
Slogo.
Senate Bill 547 by Senators Dugan of the 30th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to continue the existence of the Carrollton Independent.
Slogo.
Senate Bill 548 by Senators Dugan of the 30th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize the City of Carrollton, Georgia to exercise all redevelopment and other powers under Article 9, Section 2, Paragraph 7 of the Georgia Constitution and Chapter Title 44.
Slogo.
Senate Bill 549 by Senators Dugan of the 30th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act establishing a new charter for the City of Carrollton, approved September 9th.
Slogo.
Senate Bill 550 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act relating to the school system of the City of Savannah and Chatham County.
Slogo.
Senate Bill 551 by Senators Tillery of the 19th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to Superior Court so as to provide for a penalty for the failure of clerks at the Superior
Judiciary.
Court. Senate Bill 552 by Senator Brass of the 28th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 15-6-2 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the number of judges of Superior Courts.
Judiciary.
Senate Resolution 542 by Senators Anderson of the 43rd and others, a resolution commending women veterans and recognizing the first Tuesday in March of every year as Women Veterans Day at the state
Rules.
capitol. Senate Resolution 544 by Senators Rhett of the 33rd and others, a resolution commending the World Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce and recognizing the organization's 28th annual.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 546 by Senators Anderson of the 43rd and others, a resolution recognizing March 3rd, 2022 as Triple Negative Breast Cancer Awareness Day in the state of Georgia and March 2022.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 552 by Senators Merritt of the 9th and others, a resolution creating the Joint Achievement Gap for the Boys Study Committee and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 555 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a resolution honoring the life of Commissioner Alan Bradford and dedicating an intersection.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 557 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a resolution honoring the McLemore Resort Community and dedicating an intersection in its honor.
Transportation.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 500 by Representatives Burchett of the 176 and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 33-1-25 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the Georgia Agribusiness and Rural Jobs Act so as to provide for a
Finance.
House Bill 1086 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 31-7-18 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to influenza vaccination for
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1092 by Representatives Cooper of the 43rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 4 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to arrests by law enforcement officers generally so as to revise provisions relating.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1146 by Representatives Lott of the 122nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to provide for vehicles operated by certain law enforcement to be equipped with flashing.
Public safety.
House Bill 1148 by Representatives Rhodes of the 120th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 27-5-2.1 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the possession of cervid carcasses so as to.
Natural resources.
House Bill 1192 by Representatives Cooper of the 43rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 49 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to medical assistance generally.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1195 by Representatives Lumsden of the 12th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 85 of Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to interlocal risk management agencies in local government.
Insurance.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 514 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 511 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hofstetler of the 52nd District Chairman.
Read this report of notices hereby given the minority report.
Mr. President, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice that I will introduce a minority report to be read along with the majority report of Senate Bill 514. Respectfully submitted, Senator Elena Parent, District 42. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 345 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 496 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 378 do pass. Senate Bill 493, do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 500, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1361, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 385, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Robertson of the 29th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1363, do pass. House Bill 1364, do pass. House Bill 1366, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Transportation has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1011, do pass. Senate Bill 203, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Bill 279 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd and others. State, flag, seal, and other symbols. Placement of a monument to honor the original 33. Provide. Senate Bill 337 by Senator Walker III of the 20th and others. Public offenders. Suspension of compensation because of an indictment or a felony. Provide. Senate Bill 470 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others. Mortgage lenders and brokers, different categories of felony convictions for the purposes of investigations of mortgage loan originator applicants. Provide. Senate Bill 481 by Senator Jackson of the 41st and others. Georgia Hemp Farming Act, allow persons convicted of any misdemeanor or felony not related to a state or federally controlled substance within 10 years to grow industrial hemp. House Bill 275 by Representative McDonald of the 26th and others. Fire protection and safety, random drug tests for certain firefighters, emergency medical services personnel, paramedics, and cardiac technicians require. House Bill 891 by Representative Williamson of the 115th and others. Banking and finance and financial institutions provide for numerous updates. House Bill 899 by Representative Williamson of the 115th and others. Contracts, legal effects, and of the discontinuance of the LIBOR provisions. That completes the order, Mr. President.
It's now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? On time. The senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent that you excuse the following senators for business inside, outside the Capitol: 26, 28, and 43.
Without objection, the senators from the 26th, 28th, and 43rd are excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Going once.
One.
Chair continues to recognize the senator from the 33rd.
Ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 18th, the senator from the 18th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 18th is excused. Any additional motions to excuse? Chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. Before we get rolling, I want to introduce to you a special guest that is very familiar to us. Congressman Rick Allen is with us on the floor here for a few minutes. All right, it's now time for a morning devotional. And I'd ask that all senators take your seats and cease all audible conversations. And I would ask that the doorkeeper secure the chamber at this time. It's my honor to recognize the senator from the 43rd to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Good morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles which stand, liberty, justice, moderation. Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise to introduce to you, let me show my pretty face, the chaplain of the day, Reverend Clarence Mitchell. He is a spirited, passionate, and loving pastor whom God has called and chosen to share the gospel of Jesus Christ to many. He is a native of a rural community named Cross, South Carolina. He is a graduate of South Carolina State University, HBCU, with a degree in elementary education. He's taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grades in Orangeburg, Richland, and Berkeley counties. However, his life felt incomplete and unfulfilling. He felt a strong calling upon his life, so on January 10th, 2016, he delivered his initial sermon entitled, "I Just Can't Keep It to Myself," to enter into preaching and pastoral ministry. He is a 2019 graduate of the Turner Theological Seminary at the International Theological Center, ITC, HBCU, in Atlanta, Georgia. During his matriculation there, he served as the Turner Fellowship President and Assistant Pastor of St. Paul AME Church, where the Reverend Isaiah J. Waddy is Senior Pastor. He was elected an itinerant deacon at the 109th session of the Palmetto, South Carolina Annual Conference in 2019. He was elected as an itinerant elder at the 110th session of the Northeast South Carolina Annual Conference of 2020. Due to the pandemic, he was ordained elder on April 3rd, 2021. He served as the pastor of Singleton Chapel AME Church in the North Santee area of Georgetown, South Carolina. During his time there, Reverend Mitchell and the people of Singleton worked to make improvements to the church, sanctuary, and cemetery. Started the church's first ever free food giveaway, feeding 100 families in the Georgetown area. The church's finances grew over 300% by the grace of God. Reverend Mitchell led a very engaging and spirited administration during his pastorate at Singleton Chapel, leading them into a new era of technology and innovation. In November of 2021, with the wisdom of our Episcopal leadership, Bishop Reginald T. Jackson transferred and assigned Reverend Mitchell to the pastoral charge of Antioch East AME Church in Conyers, Georgia. Since his arrival to Antioch East, his commitment is to spiritual development and healing. Reverend Mitchell is a man after God's own heart. He has participated and created many different outreach projects that have impacted individuals locally and internationally. He is the founder of a nonprofit 501c3 organization named Imperfect Nation. He is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He plans to continue his educational endeavors to obtain a mental health counseling degree. Reverend Mitchell accredits every accomplishment and success of his to the Almighty God. Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before men and women that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. This is his mission. This is his aim. I introduce to you the Reverend Clarence A. Mitchell, Jr.
and allow me to extend to you all a pleasant good morning. It is indeed an honored privilege that a young country boy from a rural community of Cross, South Carolina is allowed to enter into these hallowed walls of justice. Indeed, I'm grateful to God, grateful to the President of the Senate, to both majority and minority leaders, to those who fight for justice for the people of the great state of Georgia. Indeed, I'm grateful to the Honorable Tanya Anderson. Allow me to bring you greetings from the 6th Episcopal District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church under the leadership of Bishop Reginald T. Jackson, and of course from the wonderful people of Antioch East AME Church in a place called Conyers, Georgia. In this moment, allow me to share with you a prayer and a devotion. This is of a story that I heard some time ago. Here it goes. There was a farmer in a small town for the past decade, always won the award for the best grown crop. He always grew the best corn. One year, a newspaper reporter decided to interview him, and to his amazement, found something very interesting about this farmer. The reporter discovered that the farmer shared his corn seeds with his neighbors. Confused by this, the reporter asks, "How can you afford to share your best corn seeds with your neighbors? Wouldn't that mess you up from winning? Wouldn't that cause you to lose having the best corn?" The farmer looked at the reporter, smiled, and says, "Not at all. Do you not feel the wind blowing against your skin? And do you know that the wind picks up pollen from ripening corn, swirls it from field to field? And if my neighbors were to grow inferior corn, deficient corn, cross-pollination will steadily degrade the quality of my corn. So if I am to grow good corn, I must help my neighbors grow good corn." Micah 6:8 says, "O people, what is good and what doth the Lord require of thee? But to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with thy God." The great Greek philosopher Plato says that justice is not mere strength, but it is a harmonious strength. Justice is not the right of the stronger, but the effective harmony of the whole. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said in his letter from the Birmingham jail, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." I admonish you, my brothers and sisters, to embody justice for all today. And shall we bow and shall we pray? Oh God, our Creator, the one who has assigned time and aligned time for us to be here, we thank you. We thank you for forming us into the greatest image that has ever been formed. Open our hearts and minds so that we may see your reflection in the face of every person on this earth today. We acknowledge that human diversity is an expression of your manifold love for your creation. We confess that in our brokenness as human beings, we turn diversity into a source of alienation, injustice, oppression, and wounding. Empower us, O Great One, to recognize and celebrate differences as your great gift to the human family. Help us to forge bonds of compassion, dignity, and respect with every person. Help us to defend what is morally and ethically fair. We thank you for the servicemen and women who are stationed at Fort Benning, Fort Stewart, and so many other military bases in the state of Georgia and around the world, for they are committed to defend and protect the United States of America. We thank you for them and now ask that your outstretched hand protect them for the uncertainties ahead. We thank you for the professional educators throughout the state of Georgia. We thank you for the longshoremen and women on the port of Savannah. We thank you for the farmers in southwest Georgia. We thank you for the doctors, the lawyers, the police officers, the politicians, the HIV activists, the clergy persons, he, she, and them who make up the great diverse state of Georgia. We thank you today, good God. Now, Creator, allow us to be the light of justice, the place of mercy, the family of love that shall change the course of humanity. Grant us wisdom and understanding. And God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. For we're trusting in you. We're believing in you. We have faith in you. Amen.
Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? The chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for my fellow senators. Did anyone here watch Jeopardy Tuesday night? All right. Georgia was well represented in the National College Championship for Jeopardy on Tuesday night, and we had a KSU alum who graduated last year, Raymond Goslow. He made it to the final round of the Jeopardy College National Championship. He ended up placing second and took home $100,000. So I just wanted to congratulate him. He was a geospatial sciences major, and he said that helped him in competing in Jeopardy. So congratulations to Owl Nation and to Raymond Goslow, second place winner in the college championship for Jeopardy. I yield the will.
They kind of have similar rules as us. They got to phrase everything in the form of a question. We're all in training. Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it gives me great pleasure today to acknowledge and salute the St. James Lodge Number 4, who will this year celebrate their 151st anniversary. St. James Lodge Number 4 was chartered March 5th, 1871, 1 year after the end of the Civil War. St. James Lodge Number 4 was the fourth Prince Hall Masonic Lodge chartered in Georgia under Grand Master James Sims. It was the first Prince Hall Masonic Lodge to be established in Atlanta. And as a result, St. James holds the distinction of being the oldest Prince Hall Masonic Lodge in Atlanta, as well as being one of the oldest black institutions in our city's history. When it was established, the lodge was under the leadership of Reverend Francis Peck Sr., the first worshipful master, and also at that time served as the pastor of a noted religious institution, Big Bethel AME Church. For many years after its establishment, St. James Lodge served as one of Atlanta's leading fraternal and civic organizations, working in collaboration with other groups. St. John's currently meets in the historic Prince Hall Masonic Temple located on Auburn Avenue, part of the Sweet Auburn Historic District in the heart of Senate District 36. The building dates back to 1937, a chief accomplishment of John Wesley Dobbs during his tenure as Grand Master. And it has been a convening spot of sorts over decades and decades. The Masons were largely instrumental in cultivating and supporting the black business community on Auburn Avenue. At one time, there were nearly 30 private sector and civic organizations in that building, and in the 50s, it was the home of WERD, the first African-American radio station. And in 1960, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., during his time as president of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, used the building as the SCLC headquarters. 150 years of existence, and throughout that time, St. James has had notable members among its ranks. I want to list just a few. Former Atlanta Mayor and UN Ambassador Andrew Young, former Georgia legislator Senator Julian Bond, Civil rights leader Reverend James Orange, National Basketball, NBA Hall of Fame Walt Bellamy, and former state Senator Vincent Fort, one of our colleagues, is included in their current ranks. I want to salute the contributions that they have made to our capital city and our state. St. James has distinguished itself as a lodge that works to improve the community by caring and looking after the widows of deceased brethren, awarding college scholarships to worthy students, and providing Thanksgiving baskets, holding clothing drives, feeding the homeless, and mentoring the next generation of leaders. all of this important work that adds great value to our civic society. The men of St. James are fathers, sons, civic leaders, civil servants, educators, Prince Hall Masons, and most of all, and I know this personally, they've shown themselves consistently to be strong pillars of the community and great Georgians. And I want to personally applaud them for their continued great works that continue to this day and on this historical milestone of their 151st anniversary. So, Mr. President and colleagues, we do have members of the St. James Lodge present with us today in the gallery. Please join me, stand and welcome them, and recognize the leadership of the St. James Lodge number 4. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your service year-round and upholding the legacy of this wonderful institution. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today because I'm just damn mad. Let me tell you, we work on honor, morality, and ethically on our advocating for issues here. And there are people in the hall that don't quite understand that. Now, a lot of people in this chamber are pro-Second Amendment people. We live it. My district is, if they had a number one issue, it would be about Second Amendment. In fact, if the NRA wanted to pass a bill that a baby had to put a gun in his diaper, I would be voting for it. And let me talk about the NRA, representing the National Rifle Association, honorable organization represented by Raymond White here, and the Georgia Carry, which is now called the Second Amendment organization, represented by Stephen Lofton. Good people. We work with them. When we have an issue regarding the Second Amendment, those are the two groups we call upon. Not that other group. The Georgia gun owners, they're led by people that are just trying to raise money off of the lies that they talk about members in this chamber, issues in this chamber. Not true. But they have invaded privacy on a lot of members here, and they're people that they're trying to stir up by telling just the blatant lies out there. This chamber will have Second Amendment issues to vote on. I'm sure primarily conservatives will vote for it, and others that aren't so conservative will not vote for it. I'm not trying to call names here. But I respect that. I respect your decision by representing your district, how you vote. I think that's what we're here for. We're a representative form of government, and we represent our people. And those issues are going to come to the floor. But they're going to come to the floor when we have enough time for a fair debate. And we should. We should represent our districts and debate issues according to how we represent our people. God help us. God bless us for that. But those people out in the hall that are just simply lying to try to stir up trouble, they need to find another profession. And by the way, they're lobbying without a lobbyist badge too, and I think that's illegal, immoral, impractical, and they should be persecuted for that. If you're going to be here, persecuted and prosecuted. Persecuted would be nailed on the cross, I think, wouldn't it? Now, I'm not necessarily against that either, by the way. But if you're going to be down here, be respectable and be honorable. And if you can't do that, if your mama didn't teach you that, you need to go home. And she needs a refresher course with you. But we're here to represent people. And I assure you, any Second Amendment bill, it'll be on the floor when we prepare the floor for the right time for a big debate so everybody can have their say. But until that happens, you people who are listening to them, don't drink the Kool-Aid. They're misfeeding you, and I would suggest there are probably things in that Kool-Aid that will hurt your health mentally. But stay tuned. We will have pro-Second Amendment bills on the floor for a heavy debate, And again, I want to thank the National Rifle Association for their assistance, and also the Georgia Carrier Second Amendment group. That other group, I don't even know what their name is much, because I don't listen to them. I listen to my constituency and other folks. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for today. Thank you for the work you do on behalf of your constituents, and thank you for being a member of the State Senate. Have a good day. I yield the way.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today because today is Augusta Day in the Capitol. In Augusta, we have two things that we love to do. Number one, we love to fight. We love to do that. But we also love the Augusta National and the Masters. And we love hosting everybody as y'all descend into our city to be hosted for the Masters. But we realize that everybody is not fortunate enough to be able to come. So we have these hats here today. So you have them. And you will see there's no year on that hat. That's for you. Because now you can say that you were there at any time. You were there this year. You were there when Tiger won his first Masters. However you want to do it, you can do it. But we're so proud to have our folks here from Augusta. And if you see them, please say hello, as today is Augusta Day in the Capitol. Thank you.
I don't see a hat. Chair, thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. My colleagues in the Senate. During my grandma's twilight years, she set out to write down her life stories, which she called Bits and Pieces, and she dedicated it to Andy Rooney. Now, my Nana just wanted to write down the good stuff, but my mom, who's a writer, encouraged her to write about the not-so-good stuff, too. And I'm so glad she did, because the stories are now that much richer. Somehow, with the passing of time, what felt like shame to my grandma transformed into stories of incredible human strength because they were just full of real life. Now, I think the same way about the history of our country. If we don't teach about the bad stuff, we miss stories of perseverance and bravery that can inspire and lift up our children. Now, the other night when we were sitting around the dinner table with my kids, my grown kids, I asked them what it was like to learn about Black history when they were in school. And my 20-year-old kid said it was hard. What my kids so thoughtfully explained is that when you're little, you tend to reduce stories to a very simplistic good and evil. Think about children's stories and their themes of heroes and villains. This, my kid said, is how little kids internalize the history of blacks and whites. And she said it was hard to be white, and thus, in the minds of little people, on the side of the villain in the story. Now, that's some tough stuff. And as a mom, I kind of knew my kids were internalizing it like that. So I explained to them that it is horrible how Black Americans were treated. And just as parents who are getting divorced must explain to their children that it's not their fault, I made sure my kids understood that our country's history was not their fault. And as they got older, I taught them the skills they needed to make sure they knew how to fight against racism in themselves and others so that they could make the world a better place for their Black classmates. Now, during Black History Month here in the Senate, we rise to tell stories of accomplished Black Americans. And it's good that we do that, but we need to do more. We must struggle with how to teach our country's history. the good and the bad, in a way that allows our children to thrive, overcome, and grow, so they can reach a higher place in race relations than the generation before them. And as lawmakers, the onus is on us to unravel the laws of our past and recognize that some were written to favor white people over blacks. And then we must change them so that we can aspire to the fundamental principle of our great nation, where all men and women are created equal. And this is hard, because it's hard for white people to see where the laws favor us, because we haven't lived the laws like our black friends have. So when our black colleague points out that a law is racist, we white people, we need to listen. And it's hard to be called a racist, especially when we don't mean to be. But you know what? It's a whole lot easier if we just acknowledge that we can sometimes act in racist ways, even when we don't mean to. Because that just means that we don't fully know, really know, what it's like to live a black person's life. So to my white colleagues, if you find yourself saying, "I'm not racist," stop and say to yourself, maybe there's something I'm not seeing. And try to listen a little harder. That's what will allow you to see how a law might be favoring white people over black people. And the amazing thing is that you have the power and responsibility to change it. So just listen, and let your children listen to all the history, good and bad, because this is how villains are transformed into heroes, and the story will have a much better ending. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th with a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I would like to welcome today a guest in our chamber, the first grandson of the 37th District, Will Resch. He's in the back corner. He's visiting with us today, has a great interest in politics, and he very much enjoys seeing the process. What I really want to talk to you about this morning is the situation in Ukraine. I know very little about the situation in Ukraine other than the fact that it is in a bad situation. We need to pray for the people in Ukraine because I heard this morning there's already been 14,000 people killed over there in that invasion from Russia. And there are a lot of good people in the Ukraine. It's a more democratic government than Russia has, and they need our prayers more than they need anything else, because God is sovereign. What I'd like to point out in the context of that, just listening to the news this morning, I heard that because of the instability in the market, the fact, because of the Ukraine situation, the stock market has taken a tumble yesterday and was expected to be down several hundred points today. Crude oil is over $100 a barrel for the first time in 8 years. I don't know about y'all, but every time I go to the service station to get gas, just the last time, I paid $3.30 a gallon for gas. I wrote it down in my day book on election day in November of 2020. I paid $1.75, $1.76. If you'll do the math on that, in 15 and a half months, our gasoline prices have gone up 87.5%. This affects everybody, and it's a huge tax. My point is this: choices make a difference. The current Washington administration, one of the first things they did was cancel the Keystone Pipeline. They changed the methodology by which natural gas could be extracted from the ground in the United States. And as a result of that, instead of having a surplus energy supply, we're now at a deficit, and we are subject to a chokehold by other nations such as Russia, and also the petroleum that's available in areas like the Ukraine. Choices make a difference. Think about that every time you go to the gas pump, and think about the choices of the people that made the decision to make this nation energy dependent on foreign nations. Thank you very much.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 41st for a point of personal privilege. You had to think about your district number for a second.
I rise this morning to speak to young women and to girls in our great state and beyond. I rise to speak directly to all girls, cis and trans alike. First, despite what others may say, I want to be clear. Trans girls are girls. Trans women are women, and we see you. You see, when I was growing up, sports were a central part of my life. However, back then in the early aughts, adults said incredibly cruel things to me about gay athletes. At first, they pretended like same-sex attraction wasn't real. Then, when they could no longer deny that, they said that people who love like me, that people who are gay, they said that there was something wrong with us. Adults said that we didn't belong in the same locker rooms with people of our same gender. They made straight athletes feel afraid by suggesting that a gay athlete would make a sexual advance or touch them inappropriately during games. As a consequence, many gay athletes didn't feel safe to come out. I didn't feel safe to be who I truly am. In college, I became an elite athlete, and I had the great privilege of representing our country on the United States national team. I played team handball on the world stage, proudly wearing a uniform with USA emblazoned on the back, while never feeling free to be my full self. As I stand here today, the very accusations and mischaracterizations that were hurled at me some 20 years ago are now being used to harm a new generation of children. And I want you to know that they were wrong to be afraid of us and to deny us of our dignity then, and they are wrong to be afraid of you and to deny your dignity now. I am committed to creating a world where you do not have to go through what I went through. I am committed to creating a world where girls, all girls, get to feel safe and free to be exactly who they are. Finally, with the authority that I have as a trained theologian and ordained pastor, I want all young women, all girls and non-binary students to understand this. You are loved by God. You are created in the image of a God who transcends any human concept of gender, feminine, masculine, and non-binary alike. Friends, you are loved. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today on one of the last few days of African American History Month to speak on two judges in particular who are both loved and respected among the African American community. The first is a little less known, but it was Judge Jane Boleyn. She's a pioneer in law. Jane Boleyn was the first black woman to attend Yale Law School in 1931. In 1939, she became the first black judge in the United States, where she served for 10 years. One of her significant contributions throughout her career was working with private employers to hire people based on their skills, as opposed to discriminating against them for their race. Boleyn defended justice and equality for women and children from the bench of New York's family court for 4 decades. Boleyn made substantial changes to ensure that children of color could receive necessary public funds. She also worked alongside of the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, to decrease juvenile crimes among young boys, supporting the Whitlock School. During her tenure as a judge, Boleyn achieved 2 legal landmarks. She eliminated the assignment of probation officers based on ethnicity. She mandatorily made private child care agencies, which ran on public funds, to help children regardless of their background. She also served on the boards of the NAACP, Child Welfare League of America, and the Neighborhood Children's Center. I, for one, as we are speaking of judges, am looking forward to swearing in our first black woman to the Supreme Court. The second person I want to highlight is one we do well know, Justice Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was sworn into the Supreme Court as the first African-American justice on October 2nd, 1967, and he served for 24 years until 1991. As counsel to the NAACP, he utilized the judiciary to champion equality for African Americans. In 1954, he won the Brown v. Board of Education case, in which the Supreme Court ended racial segregation among schools. Marshall argued and won a variety of cases to strike down many forms of legalized racism, helping to inspire the American Civil Rights Movement. Marshall consistently supported rulings upholding strong protections of individual rights and liberal interpretations of controversial social issues. He was part of the majority that ruled in favor of the right of abortion in the landmark 1973 case Roe v. Wade, among several other cases. Thurgood Marshall is revered among the black community and stands alongside the greats like Martin Luther King as one of the greatest, most important figures of American civil rights. I leave you with this quote. It's a quote from Justice Marshall. "Where you see wrong and inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is your country. This is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on." I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise today with a heavy heart and deep sadness to acknowledge the life and service of Jefferson County Commissioner H.G. Thomas New. Tommy, as he was known by his friends, passed away Wednesday, February the 16th, 2022, at the age of 78. A proud native of Jefferson County and a resident of Bartow, Georgia, Tommy possessed a unique charm and a larger-than-life personality. He won the hearts of many and never met a stranger. He loved the community. He dedicated his life to the betterment of Jefferson County. Tommy was reelected repeatedly to the Jefferson County Board of Commissioners and served as a commissioner for over 40 years, including a term as chairman. As a commissioner, he chaired the committees that oversaw solid waste disposal and recreation. He understood local government's essential services, and he strongly supported recreation, sports, and youth activities. Commissioner New was a strong advocate for the Jefferson County Hospital and clearly understood the importance of rural health care and the viability for his community. After more than 4 decades of service, Commissioner New was extremely knowledgeable in every aspect of local government, and he was well respected and liked by his fellow commissioners and state officials across Georgia. Tommy was preceded in death by his wife of 57 years, Gloria Mays New. Mr. President, I request a moment of silence in memory of the life and service of H.G. Thomas New.
Senators asked us to all rise for a moment of silence.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th to introduce to us our doctor of the day. We will have to get him some more information on the doctor of the day. I can be the doctor of the day. Any doctors in the house that want to? Well, no. Senator from the 28th is not a doctor. That's fake news. All right, we're going to move on. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to any bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. The questions on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0, and the bills having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that the bills that were passed on the local consent calendar be immediately transmitted to the House.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent that the bills that we just passed on the local consent calendar be immediately transmitted to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and they are immediately transmitted to our friends on the other side of the building. All right, we're going to move on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 472?
Senate Bill 472 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 2 of Title 46 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to organization and members of the Public Service Commission so as to change the description of the election districts for members of the Public Service Commission to provide for a manner of election and terms of office and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Reapportionment and Redistricting recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Kennedy of the 18th District Chairman.
Amendment 1 down here.
Mr. President, Senators Jordan of the 6th and others offers the following amendment. Amendment number 1, amend Senate Bill 472 by striking on line 19 the following, but each, and replace with each. By striking on line 20 and 21 the following, the state who are entitled to vote for members of the General Assembly, and inserting in lieu thereof the district that the person seeks to represent who are entitled to vote for members of the General Assembly and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to present Senate Bill 472.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. We are nearing the end of this long road we have been on for many months now in the redistricting process, and so I bring to you Senate Bill 472, which continues that work. This is the map for the Public Service Commission. I think everybody in this chamber, and certainly most everybody in the Capitol, knows the important work that the Public Service Commission does for the state of Georgia. These are very important positions, and their maps, just like the rest of our maps and our congressional maps that we worked on this past November during special session, has to be redrawn because of population shifts and population changes. As you know, redistricting is driven primarily by the numbers, and those population changes that we discussed significantly with regard to our Senate maps and the congressional maps are applicable here. You have on your desk a visual, if you will, of the map that's being presented. The bill in your notebooks, of course, is just the text, which is the language text of the map, which is how all the redistricting bills are drafted. The Public Service Commission has 5 districts. These 5 districts are a little bit different from some of the other maps we've dealt with in that the districts are there to require folks from around the state to work on and get elected for the Public Service Commission, but these are statewide elected offices. They're elected by the whole state. And that's important. It's an important part of making sure that the folks that we have and that work with and for the Public Service Commission and do that good work campaign and are elected by the entire state. You'll also see that with the map that you have before you, that this map honors the principles that we talked about during the course of redistricting for the other maps. You'll see that all the counties are whole on this map. You'll see that the districts are well drawn. One of the things that's most striking is District Number 1, how incredibly large it is, that it is virtually half of the geographic area of the state of Georgia. And folks, that's just a reminder of the population shifts and population migration within the state that we've seen over the last 10 years and that we talked about during the other processes. You'll also be happy to know this map has been vetted by Gina Wright. I think everybody in this chamber knows Gina and the good work that she's done, and that our legislative redistricting and reapportionment office that have served us so well over the last several months. The map's constitutional, and as I said, otherwise this map meets all the requirements. And I'll also say this, this is also the product of the folks that serve on the Public Service Commission. They are pleased with this map and had a hand in the drafting of it. Finally, I will say you have what I understand to be an amendment on your desk, and I'll speak briefly to it and maybe more during the close. This is entirely new, which is a little bit interesting. What you should know is that it's an entirely unvetted idea or an unvetted effort. It strikes me interesting that if this were such a good idea, as which I read it to say, that the districts would represent the 5 districts, you would still have 5 districts, but the people that would vote on the member from the district would only be the people living in the district and not the entire state of Georgia. I'll let the author explain the amendment if it's different from that. But what's interesting is that we've gone through the process. Here we are at the 11th hour. We've gone through a committee hearing where this map was vetted. This idea didn't surface. And so, like I said, it's just interesting that here we have this at the last minute. If we're going to have a discussion about a wholesale landscape shift in how the Public Service Commission is elected, something of that substance ought to be debated, ought to be vetted, ought to go through the committee process and get input, because to my knowledge, I don't know that anyone from the Public Service Commission has been approached about this idea. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
I sure will.
Senator, I was looking at the comparison from the current map to the new one, and it looks like there are pretty dramatic changes to a number of the districts. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, really like 4 out of 5, or actually kind of all of them. Why is so many? Why are so many counties moved around?
Well, Senator, it's because of the population shifts. That's why. As I discussed, for example, looking at the new map, or the new proposed map that you have to vote on, District Number 1, as I said, comprises probably half of the geographic area of the state. But these maps this map and these districts, I think, Senator, are within a degree of 1% or less of population deviation, so that the primary driver, as you know, because you work in this area a lot and you've been through this redistricting process, the primary driver behind redistricting is getting the districts of equal population. That's why we have to do it every 10 years, and that's why you see the substantial changes here. It's reflective of the population migrations in the state of Georgia.
So I take it then it's your position that it's necessary to move 41 of 159 counties?
You have to do whatever you have to do to have population districts that are equal, or as close as you can within the standard of deviation.
So you're saying it is necessary to move almost 25% of counties around to equal the population? I mean, I don't think any of our districts changed that much, maybe 1 or 2, but certainly not the vast majority of the 56 senators. Because, retaining the core of the prior district is one of the traditional redistricting principles. So it really surprises me with only 5 districts that we would need to move, according to what you're saying, almost 25% of the counties around.
Senator, the numbers are what the numbers are.
Okay. I'm also looking at this, if you continue to yield,
Sure.
AP Associated Press article that says that due to these changes, a number of our large population centers, including Gwinnett County and 10 middle Georgia counties, including Bibb County, will go 10 years without being able to run for a commission seat under the proposed changes. 10 years is a really long time to not be able to stand for election. What's your comment on that?
Well, first of all, Senator, you've not given me the courtesy of the article, number 1. Number 2, I've not read the article. Number 3, you didn't bring it to the committee hearing, and we had no discussion of that article if it were written at the time. Number 4, the concepts you're talking about now were not introduced, debated, or even injected into the committee hearing where we had, which that's the process. That's how this is supposed to work. And number 5, it strikes me really odd that someone would say something is static for 10 years when the PSC elections are every 6 years. So I don't, that
well,
to
that's
me is
that's
nonsensical.
what I mean, that because of the changes, according to this article by the Associated Press, which I'm happy to bring to you, and was published for everyone
That would
to
have been
see.
a nice courtesy before we got here, but sure,
Well, I
go
would have
ahead.
assumed you already knew this. I mean,
If you could refrain from comments and position
Okay,
your
sorry.
comments as questions,
I mean,
the chair would.
the article points out that due to these changes, many Georgians do not have the opportunity to run for office for the PSC for 10 years because of these changes. Isn't it true?
Well, first of all, Senator, I don't have the article. I don't know if you're quoting it. You are not quoting it. You're giving me your distillation of it. Second, to me, it's nonsensical for there to be a statement that somehow this denies someone's right to run for 10 years. To me, it sounds like what this is it's more of a political statement, or this article, rather than being factual, has some political angle on it that someone's displeased about. The only way a 10-year runway has any, I don't know what a 10-year runway has to do with any of this when the Public Service Commission seats or the position is a 6-year term.
Well, here it says, because of, if the election just happened and then you move it to one that's not up to 2026, that's how it happens. So it says residents in Gwinnett County, as well as in 10 Middle Georgia counties, including Bibb and Houston, will go 10 years without being able to run for a commission seat under the proposed changes. The Middle Georgia counties were drawn into Republican Commissioner Jason Shaw's District 1. Both Shaw and McDonald won re-election in 2020, meaning their seats won't be on the ballot until 2026. Eccles was last on the ballot in the current District 2 in 2016. And I'll just bring it to your desk so you can maybe address it when you're closing.
Sure, but
if
okay,
you'd like.
I guess I don't know if there was a question in there anywhere. It sounded more like a speech, but nonetheless, if my math is right, this is 2022, and someone is going to be eligible in 2026. I think that's 4 years. I don't think that's 10 years. So Senator, I'm confused. I don't know where you're getting, and maybe it's not you. I don't know where the author of the article gets a 10-year perspective on this.
I'll be happy to explain as we move forward in debate. Thank you.
Just as a quick reminder, when you're recognized at your seat, it's for a question. If you have a statement to make, you can request to come to the well and speak from the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
In your opening remarks supporting this bill that you've introduced, Senate Bill 472, did you not say that the Public Service Commission members are fine with this map that you are submitting?
Yes, they are.
And could that possibly be because it's an incumbent protection map? Could that be why is their assertion that they support this map a plus? They are incumbents who are seeking to protect their seats, and that's what this map does. Isn't that true?
Well, no, Senator, I would not characterize it that way. I don't think that's a fair characterization, and not unlike the process that you, Senator, went through when you approached me about your district, as did most everybody in this chamber, and had definite ideas and opinions about where the lines of your new district ought to be. In fairness, the Public Service Commission was given the opportunity to express what they wanted. And this was not the first map that they came out with, quite frankly. I'll tell you, there were multiple iterations of it that had to go through and pass muster with Gina Wright's office. So I think what you're trying to do inappropriately is characterize this as an incumbent protection map, number one, that is solely the work of their hand and has not been vetted or had the other considerations that get visited upon the redistricting process. And that's simply not true. It's false.
Can I correct you in your assertion that I came to you with requests about
the chair
lines of my
reminds
district?
the senators to
can
ask
I correct
a question.
You is my question. Can I correct you in saying that?
In saying what, Senator?
That I did not come and meet with you and ask for the lines to be drawn in my district any particular way?
I said many did. We
Well,
did have conversations, Senator, about what you wanted your district to look like. It may not have been a meeting.
I would beg to differ. Isn't it true?
Well, you have a memory different than mine. And again, I was making the point, Senator, to say there's nothing wrong with that. So please don't misconstrue it as though I'm casting aspersions on anyone who did that. That's the job of the redistricting chair, is to get those inputs from the people that the map impacts.
Further inquiry?
These are not parliamentary inquiries. These are questions.
That's right. I would like. Are you willing to have another question?
Are you
Senator?
asking me, will I yield the well?
No, I'm not asking you to yield the well. Would you yield for a question?
Yes, to yield a question. Yes, I will.
Thank you so much. My friend from the great city of Macon. Can you give us the history of how long this approach of voting statewide, but living in running in a district, being eligible to run, you live in a district of the PSC lines, but the vote is cast statewide. All Georgia voters cast a vote. Do you know the history of how long that's been in place and when it was changed?
No, I don't know that, Senator. I don't have that history. Those probably would have been good questions and good topics to cover at the committee hearing we had. You were welcome to have come there, and we could have had a good discussion and probably had a more productive debate here on the floor had that happened, had the committee process been respected.
Isn't it true that the committee process was respected? I'm not a member of that committee, and I'm in other committees, isn't it true? So we don't all go to everybody's committees all the time. Isn't that true?
It's true that we don't all go to everybody's
That's
committees,
right.
but if you had ideas about this, Senator, you were certainly welcome to come and sign up and speak and offer these suggestions about a landscape shift on how the safety commissioners.
You yield for a further question, Senator?
Well, would you let me finish?
Oh, certainly.
You could have come to the committee and expressed your opinions, and we would all be more prepared to talk about this.
Well, isn't it true that that could be said to every person in this chamber that is recognized to pose a question to the person in the well, that you could have come to the committee and raised that question? Now, it does not invalidate, does it?
No, that is
my
no,
inquiry because I wasn't in your committee meeting?
That is not true, and what I'm suggesting to you and telling you is the better approach for something like redistricting, Senator, that happens only once every 10 years, and you have an idea to substantially change the Public Service Commissions, the way they're elected, that deserved some discussion. It deserved to be vetted. It deserved to go through the committee process. Does that mean that you're precluded from offering an amendment? No, ma'am. I'm just making the point there's a far better way to have done this rather than here at the last minute. And you're free to offer the amendment, and I'm free to offer a heartfelt criticism about a much better way to have done this.
And isn't it true that I have not offered an amendment? We're speaking about the bill that you're bringing.
Well, then maybe I am terribly confused if you're not speaking in favor of this amendment, because it certainly sounds like you are, Senator.
I didn't say I wasn't speaking in favor of it, but I did not offer the amendment. Is that not true?
I don't see your name on it, but you certainly seem to be in favor of it.
And I would like to ask you a further question, and that is, doesn't this bill that you are presenting change the election that would be for districts that would be held if this map weren't being presented? The districts would be having their elections in 2022 in this election year. Isn't it true that it moves the election date for those districts to a date further in the future?
I don't follow that, Senator.
Your bill strikes 2022 and replaces it with another year for an election. We can pull it up and look for it, but you have it in front of you, I believe.
Well, Senator, if you'll look, it strikes the year 2012, which I'll remind you, we do redistricting every 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, please let me finish. We do redistricting every 10 years. So I wouldn't be asking y'all to vote on a bill that set the map for 2012 this year in 2022. So, of course, the maps would go into effect in 2022, just as the maps that we voted on and vetted and discussed in November of 21 that will be for the 2022 election cycle. So you seem to be suggesting that there's some different treatment of the Public Service Commission maps and election process, and that's, again, very misleading. This is changing and setting their map consistent with the population changes and a new map, just as it is for us, that we will be operating and running under for the Senate, just as the House members and just for the 14 congressional districts.
Isn't it true? It's my understanding that the 2022 election that was to occur this year has now, by virtue of the language in your bill, moved to a date beyond 2022.
No, Senator, I don't know
All right.
where you're reading that from.
Well, I may stand to be corrected, but I appreciate your taking these questions about this truly very important matter, given the decisions that this body makes for all Georgians. Isn't that true?
We're in total agreement there that this
Thank
is an
you.
important decision, and the work that the Public Service Commission does for the state is important as well.
Senator, before you continue to yield for questions, I want to just give a quick refresher course as to why we have structure in this chamber, why we ask questions from the chamber to the person in the well. Because it's exactly that, it's structure. We've had it for hundreds of years, and if you want to have dialogue, then I suggest you push the other button on your desk, come up to the well, and approach the issue from your position, but then field those questions that come to you. If you want to make a point and ask a question, that's great. If you want to make a point and make a statement, you're not allowed to do that from your desk. If a senator requests to speak and does not form it in the phrase of a question, you will no longer be recognized, and you will forfeit the right to ask that question during that debate. The chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So, is it true, and this is per your claim, that all commissioners signed off on this bill?
It is my understanding that, yes, that all 5 commissioners had a hand in looking at this and crafting this. Of course, it went through Gina Wright's office as well.
Okay. Isn't it also true that Commissioner Echols did state in the Associated Press, I did not see the map until the day after it was released?
I don't know. First of all, I don't know what article you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, I haven't seen that. Number 3, I've not talked to Commissioner Echols, so I don't know if that's his words or not.
Okay. Senator Yield,
Sure.
is it true, I'm going to ask you, that all commissioners you have spoken to signed off on this map?
I have been told by the commission and the chair that this map is the product of their collective work and their collective agreement. I don't know how more clear I can be with you on that.
Okay. I'm going to move on. Isn't it true that the Gwinnett County District is moving from District 2 to 4?
It may be, Senator, I don't have the previous map in front of me, but again, as happens with the redistricting process, counties get shifted around to get the population-driven numbers that you need, and we've also, as I said in my opening statement, that we've kept counties whole as well.
Understood. But isn't it true you have worked to make sure and looked at the data, worked with redistricting and reapportionment to produce this PSC map, correct? Is that true?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Isn't it true that the District 2 election for Gwinnett County is in 2022?
I don't know those details. I think you represent that area. You
Mhm.
probably would know more than
Yes.
me, Senator.
It's historically, District 2 is Gwinnett County.
Okay.
Isn't it true moving Gwinnett County from a District 2 into 4, District 4 elections are now in 2026?
Okay. Is there a question?
I'm asking you, is that true?
Again, I don't know the details of when those districts are coming up for election.
Okay.
But I'll assume that you're telling us the truth,
Okay.
or that you're correct on that.
But you don't know the details of the map that you've worked on with reapportionment?
No, ma'am. I know I know the details to answer. You're asking about when elections are going to be,
Uh-huh.
and that's not what drives. You're now going into political issues,
Mhm.
and we've tried not to have political issues drive redistricting here. It's
Mhm.
driven by population, and
Mhm.
I thought folks understood that from our November special election.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will yield the well.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to the measure.
So just, thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, I just want to clarify a couple things. First of all, this article is not, hidden from anyone or sprung on anyone. It was published in the Associated Press 8 days ago by Jeff Amy, who probably all of you know and is a reporter down here. So I don't think it's fair to cast aspersions or claim that it's kind of being thrown up to try to play gotcha with anybody. It's been out there for over a week. So just to explain a couple other things that is in the article, which I will, of course, I'm happy to get copied and put on everybody's desk. And you can tell when you look at the current proposal versus the current, the proposal versus our current districts, you can see that the districts are changed pretty substantially, and there are only 5 districts. So certainly it really strains credulity to suggest that you need to move 41 counties out of 159, including some of our really big population centers, to equal out population. That just does not seem plausible at all. And further, the reason that individuals in some of these areas like Gwinnett County would not have the opportunity to run for 10 whole years is because, for example, right now Gwinnett County is in District 2. And Tim Echols, who is the current commissioner in District 2, was last elected 6 years ago. And now Gwinnett County is put in District 4. And that one just got elected and will not be up again until 2026. So 2016 to 2026 is 10 years. And so the people in Gwinnett County, to use just one example of a number of other counties, including Bibb and some of the others, do not have the opportunity to run for 10 years. And it just so happens that there's a strong challenger to Commissioner Echols, who's already raised a decent amount of money to challenge him. And so those Gwinnett County residents do not have the opportunity to run for 10 years, and they are not alone. And in addition to the other sort of oddities that I already mentioned in my remarks, it just sort of does suggest that significant parts of this map were not drawn to fairly even out population. So that's why the questions are being asked. And thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the well and sit down in my seat.
You have no questions. The chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to speak to the amendment. Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. With respect to the amendment, basically what it does is it just says if you're running to represent a certain district, like we do, right, that it will be the people in that district who will vote to elect you, just like everybody in this room, right, in terms of representing these districts. Now, with respect to how this is some crazy idea that, untested, unvetted, nobody knows anything about it. Well, you know what? The state of Georgia was sued in 2020 based on the fact that you have to live in the district, but then you run statewide. And why is that? Well, because there were allegations that it violates Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And as y'all know, with respect to the Reapportionment Committee, part of the guidelines in terms of passing a map is that it does not run afoul of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in terms of process and committees and the like. And why is that? Well, it's because if you have to run statewide and you're a black candidate, you ain't gonna win probably. How do we know that? Because historically that's what's happened. I can tell you some history. The Public Service Commission dates back to 1879. 1879. And since then, there have only been 2 black members of the PSC, right? Currently there's one who was appointed and the other was appointed as well and then lost when he actually ran for re-election. It dilutes the voting power of people of color in this state. It has been overturned in other situations, specifically in Sumter County and the Board of Education there, because it's by design. It's by design, and it has worked. Listen, the people that are impacted the most by the PSC's decision in terms of the rates that they have to pay with respect to power, they are communities of color in this state. They deserve the opportunity to be represented. That is why I have a problem with this map and why I've offered the amendment. I understand the committee process and all that, but come on, y'all. Come on. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. When we talk about these particular district lines, whether it's the PSC or other lines, we always talk about the threat of lawsuits. It's going to be lawsuits. It's going to be lawsuits. Where in this particular case, there's actually one already pending, in Rose versus Ratzenberger. So the lawsuit's already pending. And one of the principal issues about that is very simple, as my colleagues already mentioned, about the fact that this does not comply with the Voting Rights Act. The other thing might be, well, everybody can file a lawsuit. Anybody can do that. That's exactly right, but here's one of the differences. In this particular situation, the United States Justice Department has actually did a written statement of interest into this particular case. And not only that, the judge has already ruled that this case needs to actually go to trial, even though a trial date has not been set, which means it's a very serious case, which means that this issue about the Voting Rights Act in this particular line, the way we're electing the PSC, is extremely serious. Because number one, you have the Justice Department doing a statement of interest, and then number two, the judge has already said, look, this case is going to be going to trial, even though one has not already been set. So the state of Georgia is litigating this very issue right now, the way we elect the PSC. And quite frankly, when we talk about, that this has been vetted and it's been an open process, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The way you do a voting rights analysis is very technical and very scientific. Above my pay grade, whether it's ecological inference, homogeneous inference, whatever it may be, it's very technical, and you'll know it when you see it because it'll have to be presented. That's the way this works. You present those inferences, you present those data, you present that type of analysis. The analysis is not just to say it's been vetted. The analysis is not just to say it complies with the Voting Rights Act, where now we know that the United States Justice Department doesn't believe that these particular lines, not the ones we're debating this second, but the way we're electing persons, does not comply with the Voting Rights Act. We have a benchmark, or we have basically outlined saying, we at the Justice Department don't think you're following the Voting Rights Act. They have intervened in this case. And not only that, if that vetting process was there, it would be shown. I asked this before during regular redistricting, and the question comes out again. Why not show the analysis that takes place? The analysis is not just, well, we got 50% of black voters over here and 30% of Hispanics over there, and therefore it complies with the Voting Rights Act. That's not the analysis. It gets to be extremely technical, and that should be shown. Heck, maybe we wouldn't even understand what we were looking at, but show us something. Show us something other than just, it complies. Just trust us, it complies. And when we talk about the process, this is part of the process. Us standing here today is part of the process. And I know a lot of times we want to get ready to go and leave, but if we have to debate this all day, it's part of the process. We'd have to change our rules to not make it part of the process. This is one part of it, to come to this chamber, to come to this body and be able to make amendments and debate those amendments and have honest debate about those amendments. This is part of the process. It's another cog in that. And it might make us uncomfortable. We might be looking at our watches, whatever it is. This is part of the process. The committee part is part of it, but so is this. And if we have to argue all day long and have a real conversation about how we're voting, then that's our job to do that. That's just what we signed up to do. And lastly, when we talk about, how we should bring these things about, quite frankly, when I look at this, I think that the better approach, we talk about the better approach, The better approach would be to do a proper voting rights analysis and to show it. The better approach from a more global standpoint would be to listen to local jurisdictions, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes. The better approach is to make sure we comply with the Voting Rights Act. The better approach is to make sure we actually follow the Voting Rights Act. The better approach is stop moving our state backwards as far as relations is concerned. I think that's the better approach. And quite frankly, that's my heartfelt assertion on this. And with that, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the, for what purpose does the senator from the 36th rise? She waves. Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clear up a few things because I was trying to get to the answer to the questions in my questioning. But the current commissioners that I'm aware of, and I couldn't get a clear answer on that, did not sign off on this bill. The commissioner in District 2 actually said that he didn't either agree or disagree. And he didn't see the map until the day after it was presented. And it's been said before, but I want to clarify here. Gwinnett County has been historically in District 2. Commissioner Eccles serves District 2. The line has been moved to make Gwinnett County into District 4. I have seen no data to support why we're doing that move. What was the reasoning? I do know we had a viable Democratic candidate who was supposed to run in District 2, and now she is not able to run in District 2 because the way the line is drawn, it draws her out, and she would have to be a resident of District 2 to run, and she's instead now in District 4. District 4, or I'm sorry, District 2 is moved to District 4, and District 4 is not up to have a candidate for election until 2026. So this is robbing Gwinnett voters of even an opportunity to have a candidate and a candidate of choice for almost 10 years. And again, I don't see the justifiable data as to why we even made that, why the move was even made. It just seems convenient when we have a viable candidate and now all of a sudden there is a move to protect an incumbent. And that is a political move. I hear what you're saying, like, oh, these, you know, the maps aren't drawn for political purposes, but, you know, in this case, it looks like it was. And I know, the PSC is, everybody's not familiar with what the Public Service Commission does or how important they are. I know it's not the most interesting thing that we talk about or the most interesting race. But I want the public to know that the Public Service Commission is severely important. And I want you to think about your power bill. Most are Georgia Power. Serves most of you and your residents. So any fees, any increasing of fees for things like, let's say, Plant Vogel, that fee gets levied to you. Republicans have controlled the PSC for decades and prevented accountability through a series of retirements and appointments. The current PSC has 5 members, as we know, no Democrats. And this has been despite the fact that Georgia has elected Democrats in recent statewide elections. Even our gerrymandered legislature has at least a share of Democrats. But the PSC has been a stronghold of Republicans for, a very long time. And then we had an opportunity for someone to compete in that, and it just so happens that person was conveniently denied that opportunity. Under Republican stewardship, as I was saying, the PSC has failed to control costs at Plant Vogtle and shoveled those profits in utilities with no regard to protecting Georgia consumers. So the PSC is important. It is an important commission, and it's important to Georgians. And, you know, I would suggest that we vote no on this map. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for hanging with us. I know the map stuff sometimes gets a little dry, but we got a little excitement today with a new idea that's not vetted and one that I submit to you, you need to reject. So, did a little checking on this. So when was one question that was posed earlier that I didn't know the answer? Who came up with the idea of statewide elections, but you have to live in your district? Well, guess what? Democrat, Governor Roy Barnes. That's where the idea came from, and that's where this model started with and came from. So, as to the core question, why is it set that way? I think everybody in this room knows, but just to make sure, the Public Service Commission, and I want to quote my friend from the 9th, the PSC is severely important. You are absolutely right, Senator. And it's for that reason and the big issues that they deal with that we don't need regionalism. We don't need district fights about what the statewide public policy ought to be, such as the energy source for the state of Georgia for the next 50 years. We need people that have a statewide purview of the issues that they deal with because they are statewide challenges. And those people that get sent to those, quote, severely important jobs need to be people that have heard from and have a constituency that consists of the entire state of Georgia. That's why the model is the way it is. That's why Governor Barnes supported it. That's why it's been this way for so long. And I submit it makes so much sense and it's so much common sense. It's why the idea of changing it the way that this amendment wants to do knew it would not survive the scrutiny of a committee or anybody asking any serious questions about it. We do not want regionalism. Now, my friend from the senator from the 6th commented about, wait a minute, we've got a lawsuit already pending. This model's broken. Something about it doesn't work. Well, guess what? There's a lawsuit filed in 2020. That trial starts on June the 27th of 2022. So we all know just because a lawsuit got filed doesn't mean that something's wrong. That will be vetted through the process, and I will tell you, it is my understanding that the state of Georgia is vigorously defending the allegations and claims of the Voting Rights Act. That case will work its way through the process, and we'll get a result in a few months on that. You know, my friend from the 6th, and the comments about the committee process, she just said, quote, I understand the committee process. Come on, y'all. Well, I would just sort of put it back the same way. Are we really going to make a landscape shift in the way such an important body of the state government operates at the last minute here and not even mention it through the committee process? Of course not. So with that, I ask you to vote for the bill. I'd ask you to vote down the amendment, leave the process, leave the Public Service Commission election process the way it is. It works. These are very important positions. We need people that understand and have a statewide view of things. The last thing we need are issues like the utilities and how Georgia's going to deal with that for the next several decades being thought about with a regionalistic approach. That would be very bad for the state of Georgia. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. We will first take up amendment number 1, presented by the senator from the 6th. Is there objection? For what purpose does the senator from the 26th rise?
Mr. President, I move we table Senate Bill 472.
That motion's in order. All right, the motion to put this bill on the table is non-debatable, and we'll put it on the board. All those in favor of placing Senate Bill 472 on the table, vote yea, opposed nay. All those in favor of tabling, vote yea, opposed nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion to place Senate Bill 472 on the table, the yeas are 21, the nays are 33, and the motion has failed. We are back to taking up amendment number 1. Is there objection to adoption of amendment number 1? There is objection. All those in favor of adoption of amendment number 1, vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of amendment number 1, the yeas are 22, the nays are 33, and the amendment has failed. We will now take up the underlying measure. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 33, the nays are 21. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. For what purpose does the senator from the 26th rise?
Mr. President, I would ask this move to reconsider Senate Bill, I believe, 472.
Senator from the 26th has provided notice that he'd like to make a motion to reconsider on the next legislative day. We'll take that up on our next legislative day next week. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 1028?
House Bill number 1028 by Representatives Earhart of the 36th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the election of members of the Board of Education of Cobb County so as to change the description of the education districts of such board and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th to present House Bill 1028.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. It's my privilege and pleasure to bring to you this afternoon House Bill 1028 dealing with the redistricting for the Cobb County Board of Education. This is a fairly drawn map. It's a good map. It tries as much as possible to preserve communities of interest. It's drawn along precinct lines as much as possible. There are more concise districts than currently exist, and you'll see there's no wild fingers on these maps. Let me give you a little history about the Cobb School District, not so much history, but the geography. Almost in the geographical center of Cobb County, you have City of Marietta, and they operate the Marietta City School District. And so as you look at Cobb County in terms of redistricting historically and as far back as I can remember, all the districts more or less circulate around the hub that consists of the Marietta School District. And it's in this map is a more concise district map. It's always been an issue that came up in redistricting for school districts. Why can't they follow the district lines of high schools? You cannot exactly mirror the high school attendance zones due to the complexity of that task because we have almost 20 high schools in Cobb County. Cobb County School District, as I said, encircles the city of Marietta, and it's somewhat complex to draw these districts that would suit everyone. There's less than 1% variation in the size of this. No district members or no school board members have been districted out of their district. And lastly, it meets all constitutional standards. I urge your support of this bill. Mr. President, if there's no objections or questions, I will yield the way on.
You have no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1028? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 33, the nays are 20. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does the senator from the 37th rise?
Mr. President, I move that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 1028 to the House.
Senator from the 37th has moved that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 1028 to the House. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of immediately transmitting House Bill 1028, vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the motion to immediately transmit, the yeas are 33, the nays are 20, and has failed to reach the 2/3 required and does not immediately transmit. It will move tomorrow. What purpose does the senator from the, we're active today. For what purpose does the senator from the 26th rise?
Mr. President, I'm being proactive.
Proactive, there you go.
Proactive. Mr. President, isn't it strange that all of these local bills are now general bills rather than going through the local consent because they can't get the folks to agree the way they want them to agree?
It is the chair's recognition of the legislative process. Secretary, will you please read the caption of House Bill 1154?
House Bill number 1154 by Representatives Carson of the 46th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners of Cobb County so as to change the description of the commissioner districts and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair wants to make a quick recognition that there is lunch out in the hallway if you want to grab a sandwich. I know that we've got a busy calendar here today. There's no intention to pump the brakes and take a lunch break. So if you want to grab a sandwich, or I'm not sure what's out there, but sandwiches, I'm being told. So just wanted to make sure everybody knows that. Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to speak to House Bill 1154.
Thank you, Mr. President. Most of you know that I've lived in Cobb County since 1986, and I've seen many changes there, especially over the last 10 years. This map reflects the changing composition of our county, and you can find it on your desk. This bill passed the House and our Senate SLOGO committee with no changes. It draws a new Cobb Commission map as we're required to do every 10 years. The map maintains communities of interest as follows: Northeast Cobb, Northwest Cobb, Southwest Cobb, and a Central Cobb district that includes the development along I-75 from Cumberland, the Battery and Brave Stadium, to Town Center Mall and Kennesaw State University. This is a vibrant district that has exploded over the last 10 years. It's home to a lot of young professionals and many major corporations. This area has changed significantly over the last few years. Each of these areas represents a community of interest, including churches, schools, and other activity centers that pull the areas together. This map maintains the current 2-2 political split in the county, which reflects the current population, with the chair being elected countywide. Some think this map could have been drawn in a more partisan way. This map does not do that. The county commission voted along party lines on a different map, but there was never a consensus among the Cobb delegation on any map. The local process works when an agreement can be reached. That is not the case with this map, and a vote was never taken by the Cobb delegation. One of the sitting commissioners moved into the new District 3 a few miles from another commissioner last year. She certainly knew that redistricting was about to occur. Incumbent protection is not a priority of redistricting. This map is fair and balanced and reflects the communities of interest in the county, as well as the changing composition of the county. It meets all constitutional requirements and has been vetted by our redistricting and reapportionment office. I know there may be people who want to speak on this bill, so I'll listen to any debate from my seat and come back to close the issue. I yield the will, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to speak to the measure.
No, this isn't. Thank you, Mr. President. I can agree with the sponsor that this map does in fact reflect the changes
Senator,
in
if you
Cobb
could hold
County.
on for 1 minute. I know we got a lot going on. I know we've offered up sandwiches in the hallway, but if you could please give the senator in the well your respect and your attention. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. It does reflect the changes in Cobb County, but not in the way that I think that the senator from the 32nd intended. What it reflects is an effort by the majority party to actually try to take back power after they've lost elections previously. Now, in terms of Cobb County, it has diversified. It is an incredible county. It is diverse, it is vibrant. I mean, there is so much going on over there. And so that's why this kind of just flies in the face. It does not represent the Cobb County that I know. And let me talk about what one of the biggest issues with the commission map is. There is a young woman who was elected to the Cobb County Commission, a woman of color. Her name is Jerica Richardson, Commissioner Richardson. This map draws her out of her district. Draws her out of her district. Y'all, she's a woman of color. That is the first woman of color to represent this particular district. And then she just gets drawn out. Oh, well. And we have members of the majority party basically saying, well, you know, she committed political suicide. It's not my fault. Look, in terms of reapportionment, this has been ugly, especially in Cobb, with respect to Congresswoman Lucy McBath, the efforts to oust her in terms of her district, and in terms of the school board too. A woman of color, the first woman of color to be elected to the Cobb County School Board, she was drawn out of her district. And now Commissioner Richardson, three women of color in Cobb County. Y'all, why don't y'all just try to win elections instead of changing the lines and changing the rules? I yield the well.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair sees none. Does the senator from the 32nd wish to close debate? She does. Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to comment on the other maps that we're not talking about right now, but the commissioner who was in her old district, who moved 4 months after election to an area within a couple of miles of another incumbent commissioner, people make decisions, and I don't think we bend district lines to follow a commissioner and a realtor around the district. I think what we're supposed to do is draw fair maps. This one's fair and balanced. It's been vetted. It meets all the constitutional requirements, and I would ask for your favorable consideration. I yield the well.
Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 33, the nays are 18. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Resolution 477?
Senate Resolution by Senator Mullis of the 53rd and others. A resolution creating the Joint Georgia Music Heritage Study Committee and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules recommends that this resolution do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes our distinguished Rules Chairman to present Senate Resolution 477.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pretty soon we're going to put a map on your desk for the Senate Joint Rules Music Heritage Study Committee. Oh, come on, that's kind of funny. Anyway, this is kind of an easy bill in amongst of tough issues. So I'm privileged and happy to present this Georgia Joint Heritage Study Committee for Music. This deals with economic impact for the music industry in Georgia, which if the rules permitted, we'd have the senator from the 46th district stand up and sing, because he has a great singing voice and has a lot, and he represents an area that is music, and that's the Athens part of this state, as well as senator from the 16th and the 26th with Macon, and music is just everywhere. And from the 43rd, she does have a beautiful singing voice, but we'll get that permit later on. But Georgia has had great entertainers, from Ray Charles to Johnny Mercer. I know that's the old music crowd, to Alan Jackson, to just many others, to the Allman Brothers. That is where my son was named after Greg Allman, believe it or not. So this helps us kind of make way and see how we can help the music industry in its unusual times with COVID-19 amongst us, and they've been with us for a couple years now. The current state of music tourism sector in Georgia and the ways that we can support it, promote it, and help it grow is part of the study committee's effort. Music tour and musical tour and theatrical promotions in Georgia, and that's what I do. I go to the theater often, and along with the senator from the 34th, and we watch our fine entertainment committee and our musical talents perform, and it's truly a joy. The Georgia Music Hall of Fame, which has been a little closed for a few years, and we're about to get that revitalized. Its award ceremony and the ways that the institution can promote music in Georgia while providing and continuing economic development and education. That's what this study committee is about. We pass it here because it's a joint study committee, so we can work with our House members too. Mr. President, I'll be glad to answer any questions or sing a song or do a little dance or whatever's needed to pass this
Chair
bill.
recognizes the senator from the 33rd with a question. Or is he going to sing it for us?
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes, Sergeant.
I just want to let you know I support you on this endeavor that you're working on. But before you leave the well, could you sing one chorus of us for Thank God and Greyhound, You're Gone?
That's not funny. And thank you for that, but I got a little laryngitis, so I'll have to sing later.
That's
Anything
an
else,
answer
Mr.
to prayer.
President? All right, yeah, that's good.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate your support. Have a good day. I yield the well.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Resolution 477? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the resolution? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. The resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 397?
Senate Bill 397 by the Senator from the 8th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend titles 15, 20, 25, 40, 42, and 43 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to courts, education, fire protection and safety, motor vehicles and traffic, penal institutions and professions and businesses, respectively, so as to update and replace terminology related to general educational development diplomas and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tippins of the 37th District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education offers the following a substitute to Senate Bill 397. A bill to be entitled an act to amend titles 15, 20, 25, 40, 42, and 43 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to courts, education, fire protection and safety, motor vehicles and traffic, penal institutions and professions and businesses, respectively, so as to update and replace terminology related to general education, educational development diplomas and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 8th to present Senate Bill 397.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be as brief as I possibly can. I know everybody's ready to eat lunch. I bring to you today, colleagues, Senate Bill 397, the high school equivalency legislation. This is a governor's bill. It was drafted with the help of our technical colleges of Georgia and the Georgia Student Finance Commission. And what it's doing basically is in the past, the only pathway to get a high school equivalency was a GED. And today we have High Set and we have Career Plus. And so you have multiple pathways. And so this cleans up the language where these other pathways to get a high school equivalency are now eligible for the GED grant. And also, the other part of the bill is in the past you would have to once you passed got through your curriculum and you passed the GED test, you got a $500 voucher. And what we found out is that this having to come up with the money out of pocket on the front end. These tests have gone up to over $200. And so at any rate, we're taking that money on the back end and putting it on the front end where people who can complete their education don't have to come out of pocket to take the test. And I'll yield for any questions, Mr. President.
You have no questions. You did such a great job in the well. Good job. Any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 397? The chair sees none. The questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 435?
Senate Bill 435 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to education so as to provide that it shall be unlawful for Georgia public schools or participating private schools whose students or teams compete against a Georgia public school to operate, sponsor, or facilitate athletic programs or activities that permit a person of one gender to participate in an athletic program or activity that is designed for persons of the opposite gender and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District, Chairman.
Minority report's been filed. Minority report's been filed.
Mr. President, a minority report has been filed, and that completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 16th to speak to Senate Bill 435.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of this chamber. I present to you this morning, or this afternoon now, SB 435. This bill is about fairness. It's simply not fair to force biological girls to compete against biological males, and it's certainly not fair to expect girls to endure the immense social pressure against them if they speak up for themselves. In a national women's website, it said this, quote, "High school girls who play sports are less likely to be involved in an unintentional pregnancy, more likely to get better grades in school, and more likely to graduate than girls who do not play sports. Girls and women who play sports have higher levels of confidence and self-esteem and lower levels of depression. Girls and women who play sports have a more positive body image and experience higher shares of states of psychological well-being than girls and women who do not play sports." End of quote. The Save Girls Sports Act requires that all participants in student athletics within the Georgia education system to compete against others who are of the same biological gender. Students' biological gender is determined by their birth certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our responsibility as legislators and as adults with common sense to resolve this issue and ensure that Georgia's girls aren't robbed of time on the field, a chance for character building athletic accomplishments, and invaluable scholarships. Forcing girls to play against biological boys inhibits the ability of young girls in the state of Georgia to win competitions, receive scholarships, and achieve the highest level of success in their sport. Senate Bill 435 protects the level playing field. This legislation states that public schools and private schools choosing to compete athletically against public schools must only allow biological girls to compete in girls' sports. This will allow more girls to achieve their dreams. Mr. President, I'm going to exit the well without question and let those who would like to speak for or against it continue. Thank you, sir.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to ask some questions about this bill. So I rise today to speak against SB 435. Those of you who have worked with me, who's basically all of you, are aware that my approach in this body is usually pretty measured. And I hope it's in this context that you listen when I say that this bill and bills like it are quite simply monstrous. Let's just back up for a second. So as both a physician and a member of this body, my top priority is on minimizing demonstrated harms. Not theoretical harms, not anticipated or presumed harms, but demonstrated, proven harms. And there is a substantial body of evidence and demonstrated harm of discriminating against trans youth. Current data points to a direct correlation between discriminatory policies like those in SB 435 and a high incidence of negative mental health outcomes, depression, substance abuse, and suicidality. We know this to be the case. This has been borne out in clinical and social research. It is the position of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association, and most importantly, it's what the parents and families of our trans children tell us to be the case. So what is our role here? At the end of the day, what do you want to say we accomplished here? This bill purports, I would say, paternalistically, to protect girls from harm and keep them safe. Whose girls are we protecting? And from which harm? A theoretical harm? Or a harm that we ourselves are inflicting on them? Let's talk just for a second about the goal of youth sports. Literally, dozens of people have been watching the Winter Olympics these past few weeks. That was a joke. And we all know how exciting it is to watch athletes perform at the highest possible level. But that's not the goal of youth sports, is it? The goal is not to create Olympians. The goal is not to create first-round draft pro athletes, right? That's not why we drive our kids to soccer or to baseball practice or to their swim meets or sign our 4-year-olds up for t-ball or sports camp at the YMCA, right? The goal of youth sports is teaching our kids about teamwork and about community. The goal of youth sports is teaching problem-solving skills, communication, helping our kids be healthier and more active. The goal of youth sports is giving richer, happier lives to our kids with more connections and opportunities for success. Why would we rob our trans daughters of these same chances? Who are we to tell parents of trans children that they don't have the right to fight for their kids to be full members of society, just like every other kid? As an elected official, it is my responsibility to care for the well-being of all our children in our community, and that includes trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming youth. They are our kids too. And without any adequate scientific or social evidence to support this type of state-sanctioned cruelty, I cannot support this piece of legislation, and neither should you. Because I've heard a lot this session about advocating for mental health. I've heard a lot this week about standing up for the rights of our children and their families and allowing parents to make the best choices for their own kids. We need to prioritize mental health for all Georgians. We need to stand up for the rights of all our children and their families, not just the ones that look like ours. Targeting our most vulnerable children and criminalizing those who love and care for and protect them is barbaric. It's not worthy of this chamber and the good people that I know who work here. And it is in this spirit that I implore you to vote no on this bill. And unlike the bill author, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd to your right for a question.
Lady, do you yield?
I do yield, man.
Senator, has this been an issue in Georgia?
To my knowledge, there has not been an issue in Georgia relating to the reason for bringing this bill.
Senator, now, are you familiar with the term playing up?
If you would explain so that everyone can understand what we're talking
Playing
about.
up means there's a gifted woman athlete, such as a golfer, who want to play golf with boys to better her skills. This bill would prevent her from playing up. Or if there's a issue with a young lady who is a gifted kicker and want to play on the men's football team as a kicker, this bill would prevent that person from participating in men's sports as well.
The senator knows of what he speaks. I will also note that even within girls' teams, that there's a lot of physical variation between girls. I know that because I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she's quite tall for her age. You know, there's some girls that are faster and stronger than other girls. Should we not allow people who are outside of, you know, a certain part of the bell curve to not play with their peers because there's a physical advantage that they have or that they might hurt other athletes on their team? Does that make sense to people? I pose that to the body.
Do you continue to yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I do.
Well, Senator, I was going to ask a couple bills about the questions about the technical language on here of the author, but you're a doctor, so maybe you can answer them. It says on lines 28 and 29, a statement of the student's biological sex on the student's official birth certificate shall be deemed to have correctly stated the student's biological sex at birth if the statement was included on such birth certificate. What will happen under this legislation if there is no statement as to biological sex on the birth certificate?
I think the senator brings up a very important question. It was actually one of the questions I was also going to ask the bill author, is to define the difference between biological sex and gender. Because I believe on this bill, when you read through it, it actually conflates the two, and they are actually quite different. Biological sex is based on genetics, karyotyping, physical attributes, whereas gender is a social construct, and it's how you identify yourself in society. So there really is no gender assignation at birth because there's no social aspect to which the baby or child is identifying. I don't know how to answer that question. I would love to ask the bill author that question, that if there is no biological sex designation on the birth certificate, how we deal with these children. I also would say that these are not absolutes, that, you know, often in this body, we think and we're taught to think in binaries, right? Everything is yes or no, up or down, we push the red button or the green button. Even biological sex itself is not always in a binary state. And I know this because I used to work in pediatrics, and we would often have in the newborn nursery patients who it was not clear from a visual assessment what their biological sex was, because there are patients who are intersex, there are patients who have ambiguous genitalia, and these patients require further workup. We need to do genetic karyotyping, and these are types of things that are really beyond the scope of this bill. So oversimplifying it in this way to say whatever is determined on a birth certificate, yes or no, you know, male or female, is really oversimplifying the case. And thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I do.
Senator, as a medical professional with absolutely decades of study and preparation for your profession, would you be able to shed some light on the incidence of trans children and trans people across the state, say the state of Georgia?
I would say, as I was noting in my statement, that this bill and bills like it, and we are seeing bills like this all across the country. I will note that we did see a bill of this flavor just come out of Texas yesterday, which was shocking in the degree of discrimination and persecution of trans youth in that state. Is this bill addresses a theoretical harm. I think what we should be targeted in doing in this body is addressing demonstrated harms. And the demonstrated harms that we've seen and have been borne out in clinical research and in the demographics that we've had from decades of study on this is the demonstrated mental health harms of ostracizing and stigmatizing trans youth. I think when we talk about school environments and parents making choices for their kids, parents of trans children simply want them to have the best lives possible. They want to protect them, and they want to make sure they can minimize the risks of these mental health, substance abuse, suicidality, all these things we've talked about. And part of that protection is allowing them to fully participate in school, with their peers, and indeed on sports teams, because that has a protective effect that has been well demonstrated in the clinical studies.
Thank you for that. If you'll further yield.
Absolutely.
The suicide and the thoughts of suicide and the attempted suicides among transgender youth. Could you comment on how shocking they are and how the very last thing we should be attempting to do as public officials is to further stigmatize, further isolate, further marginalize transgender youth with policies like this? Could you comment on that?
I can, and it's very important, given that this body and our colleagues across the hall have made an explicit push and focus on mental health in this state. We cannot have these conversations without talking about this and what impacts this has on mental health. Trans youth, nearly half of them, in the clinical studies that we talk about, have contemplated or attempted suicide. Nearly half. Let's be clear, we are talking about children here. We are talking about a bill that increases risk, stigmatizes, and endangers children. I know that many of us in this body have children. Many of us have children that are about the age of the children that we're talking about in targeting in this bill. Just really think about what this means, to know that some of the protective measures that we've demonstrated is the social supports provided by school, athletics, all the wonderful, benefits that the senator from 16th addressed in his remarks. To take them away from an especially vulnerable group, knowing that taking away those supports increases their risk of suicide, substance abuse, death, is unconscionable. And I cannot believe we are having this conversation, and yet here we are.
Further inquiry, if the senator will yield?
Absolutely.
Isn't it likely, highly likely, that the distribution of transgender youth across Georgia is probably fairly equal in all our districts? Isn't it true that for every legislator who occupies a seat in this chamber, there are families with transgender children? Isn't that true?
I would say that from a population basis, I assume that to be true. What the difference is how much these children are supported in their different communities.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
You have no more questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 435? The chair sees none. Would you like to speak? Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm the mother of a trans child. And it's hard to stand up here and say that because it hurts. It really, really hurts. And my kid contacted me last night and said, "Is that bill going to come up in the Senate today?" And I said, "Yes, it is. And I'm dreading it." Now, I've talked to my kid about this issue. We have a Google document that we communicate in when the subjects are too hard to do in person, to talk about in person. And so we had a long conversation in this Google document about this issue. And we both have conflicted feelings about it because it is such an incredibly complex issue. And we both recognized that between the two of us, we could not come up with the perfect solution. What we could agree on is that we need more recreational sports for all children in high school because so many kids are excluded from sports because they're short or they just can't perform up to the level, or they didn't start sports in 3rd grade, and so everybody else, they got left behind. So we need more recreational sports in high school for all kids. But in terms of this bill, it's not thought out well. It's sloppy. Let society deal with this issue for a little while. Let the sports associations see if they can figure it out. Because each sport is different. And some sports, it might make more sense than other sports. And it just needs to be considered on a case-by-case basis. And so I just want this to stop, because this feels premature and this feels judgmental. This is an issue that it's new. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but we're dealing with it in a new way, and we don't understand it. So let's not move so fast, because this is hurting our kids. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I think that we are in a moment that offers a rare opportunity. It's probably safe to say that many of us in this chamber, elected senators, don't personally know a family with a transgender child. That doesn't mean they're not out there. It just means they have not come to your attention or brought this to your attention. But the senator from DeKalb spoke to you through tears of a parent who is thrust into a position of coming publicly to ask for you to look into your heart, look into your hearts, each of us, to really determine not what's a party line vote, what the caucus said, but to really think humanistically about what message you're choosing to send to these families. And you know, when I was coming up, did I know a transgender child? Not to my knowledge. It was completely not a safe space for anyone to step forward and self-identify in that manner. It was a very rare family and child that would do that. Today, we have moved forward, as we always hope society will do, broaden our understanding, deepen our compassion, listen to those who are sharing their lived experience. You just heard from a colleague in this chamber, one that I certainly respect, and I believe she's widely respected in this chamber for her honesty, her directness, her integrity, her diligence, and the serious way with which she approaches issues and represents her constituents. You just heard from her, speaking from her lived experience. It's really a moment where we have an opportunity to truly do the right thing. What would the right thing be? I think it would be to table this bill. I think it would be to listen with your heart and understand that each of us have families in our districts, have families in our constituency that are engaged with helping to learn how to support a transgender child. Children for whom the suicide rate is almost 50% for transgendered people. And that's not a made-up number. That's what the studies show. Suicide. Probably most of us know someone who's lost a family member to suicide. Try to think about it in that kind of way. Are we lifting up a policy here? Are we promoting a bill that furthers, that's stigmatizing transgendered children and transgendered people. None of us as human beings should want to do that. None of us as human beings would welcome that opportunity to put this bill up on the board and vote to further stigmatize transgender children and transgender people. I'm glad, happy, rejoicing that society is opening up and understanding, beginning to understand this phenomenon of transgender people. I've been in this chamber many years ago when I came from the House with a hate crimes bill, and there was a huge homophobic move in here to slam down on gay people and not let them be protected by a hate crimes bill. That's a long time ago. My party was running things then. We're better than this, and we have this unique and special opportunity due to the bravery and the ability of the senator from the 40th to share her family's situation and to share the reality that they live and to draw from her lived experience to ask us not to do this. Coupled with the very fine remarks of the senator from Gwinnett that we heard earlier. So I'm going to take my seat. Sometimes I get accused of talking too long. I'm going to try to not go further, but I've tried to earnestly bring you a matter for you to consider as individuals. And I would think and hope that the author of the bill would understand if you hear the message and you vote to put the bill on the table. Thank you for your attention.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 28th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's not an easy topic for any of us. And my heart certainly goes out to the senator from the 40th and your child and all the families that this could potentially affect. But what we've heard today is we've heard the term playing up. And we've heard that playing up is a real thing. So if playing up is a real thing, then we all must assume that playing down too is a real thing. And if playing down is real, then it is my humble opinion that we do have an obligation to protect others against this. And that is the intent of this bill. We've come a long way in this country in how we treat women and a long way for women's rights. I believe that women's sports is one of the greatest tools that we have in our constant fight for gender equality. And this bill simply helps protect that tool. Nothing more, nothing less. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd for the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's gotten quiet in here. I believe that everyone feels the weight of this topic. And it's sad that I feel like here we go again. It's another election year bill about another fabricated problem. And what's worse is this time, it's just gratuitously mean and vindictive. This bill causes very real damage to vulnerable children in its quest to ignite and harness fear over change. And the change is the changing cultural mores about gender identity and accepting people for who they are. And through it, AIM is taken at kids who just want to be like other kids. They just want to be able to be like their friends and play on a sports team. Youth sports. What is the point of youth sports? What we tell our kids is that whether they win or lose is not the most important thing. The refrains on that now are the same as when all of us were kids, playing on sports teams and being raised by our parents. In sports, you learn cooperation. You learn to achieve goals by working together as a team. You learn that hard work and practice lead to improvement. You learn to deal with disappointment when you lose, and you learn how to win gracefully and be a good sport. All of these are very important life lessons that serve children well as they mature into adults. You learn a love of physical activity that hopefully lasts a lifetime. You form important relationships with your teammates and your coaches. And let's talk about the characteristic that underlies sportsmanship. It's empathy. The ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. That's why we tell kids, you don't celebrate when someone else lost or is having a hard time. But I can't find a shred of empathy in this bill. Instead, taking aim at a small group of children who already have a lot to grapple with, to tell them on no uncertain terms, you are different and you don't belong, and there's something wrong with you. And why? Why? There isn't even one example of a school policy being inclusive of transgender athletes that's been a problem in our state. There's no problem to be solved, which makes the legislation just really cruel. But you might ask, shouldn't we make sure that cisgender girls have an equal shot at winning, even if we agree that winning isn't the most important thing about kids' sports? The fact is they do. They do have an equal chance at winning. And in fact, as you move into elite athletics, where winning is unquestionably more important, what you find is that the organizations governing athletics at that level do not exclude transgender athletes. For Olympic athletes, the International Olympic Committee, the NCAA, the Women's Sports Foundation, these professional sports organizations have nuanced and inclusive policies. These policies are developed to balance participation and fairness, with a recognition that transgender athletes have no inherent biological advantage. Even at the very highest levels of competition, the pinnacle of sport, there is no ban. There is no generalized ban on transgender athletes. But here in Georgia, we think it's a good idea to start with children, and some of our most vulnerable children, for no reason that's been articulated well. The suicide rates of transgender youth are already 3 to 4 times higher than that of cisgender youth. And I just can't help but wonder if the people and groups that are pushing this legislation don't care about that. Just don't care. We know that suicide is a problem among transgender youth. And on the other hand, we don't have any examples of girls being harmed by transgender athletes in Georgia, and very, very few examples that can even be pointed to around the entire country. It's been argued that there could be situations in the future that could impact whether girls want to participate in sports, if they feel like the playing field is unlevel. But in states with trans-inclusive policies, like California and Connecticut being the state where the one example that apparently justifies, is being used to justify the legislation throughout different states around the country, Connecticut's the one pointed to, high school girls' participation in sports has remained unchanged from 2011 to 2019. But in states with trans-exclusive policies, girls' participation has actually decreased. Ostracizing vulnerable children to get votes is despicable. And more than that, it's pathetic. Possibly some members of our chamber earnestly believe that it's necessary to isolate trans girls so that other girls can win a track meet. But I'd wager that most of us don't. Or at least we know deep down that the lessons about humanity that we are discussing are more consequential than any track medal. I bet Governor Kemp knows this too. I'd like to think that we all know that the lessons we teach our children about morality and about doing unto others as we would have done to ourselves are ultimately what's important as we journey through this life. The irony that this bill lacks the very empathy we try to instill in our children is not lost on me. And I hope it's not lost on you. I urge you to stand up for all children and vote no on this gratuitously mean and vindictive piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. President. I've also spoken to the minority report, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 41st with a question.
Senator, do you yield?
I do, to my friend from DeKalb.
I'm going to ask for your legal expertise as a lawyer to look at the bill, if you will.
I have it, yep.
On lines 29 and 30, it says that the correctly stated student's biological sex at birth, that's what's going to kind of guide us. If such birth certificate were issued near the time of a student's birth, isn't it true that if a child is adopted, they get a new certificate that may be issued long after they are born?
Yes, that is true.
So if we go on to the next page to lines 44 and so on that talk about how this gets processed, if an adopted child who has a new birth certificate which was issued long after their time of birth, if that child's gender is questioned, how do you imagine the designated employee determining the gender or sex of that child?
Wow, I mean, that's a great question, Senator. I think it brings up a lot of really difficult questions about invasion of privacy. Are we going to be doing genital inspections? Would we be trying to run chromosomal studies? Again, the issue that came up in conversation with the senator from North Fulton about intersex children. All of these questions remain unanswered.
Do you further yield?
I do.
So in section B, I think 2A actually, this bill states that essentially any person whose gender is male, I'm quoting line 36, any person whose gender is male is basically not permitted from participating in any sport that is designated for females unless there is not an equivalent interscholastic or intramural athletic program for males. So, in your legal expertise, does this mean that a designated male, boy, would be able to play slow pitch softball, fast pitch softball, or if there's not a volleyball team, which there are only 15 boys volleyball teams in our state, does this mean that a boy will now get to walk onto a girls' softball team?
It says a person with the designated male gender cannot participate in athletics designed for females unless there is not an equivalent interscholastic or intramural athletic program for males. So in your examples, that male would be able to play softball or volleyball on the girls' team.
And do you further yield?
Yes.
I just want to be clear. In my understanding of the author, the intention is to prevent what they wrongly call biological males from playing on girls' sports. So does this bill, in fact, allow biological males to play on girls' sports?
It does. In any instance where there isn't an equivalent team just for males, then yes, that male would be able to play on the girls' team and use this code section as their justification.
Thank you, Senator.
Do you continue to yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th with the question.
Thank you. Senator, do you yield?
I do yield.
Again, I will borrow your legal eye on this piece of legislation. I would have been happy to ask this of the bill author, but lines 44 through 47. Line 44 starts by saying a student who is aggrieved by an alleged violation or anticipated violation of this subsection should have a right to file a grievance.
Yes.
I'm a little hung up on this language of the anticipated violation. In your understanding of the law and how you read this bill, what would that even look like? What does this mean?
You raise, first of all, I mean, it's an excellent question. And first of all, it brings up a lot of questions about vagueness of language and therefore enforceability and all sorts of other things. And before I finish answering your question, it should be noted that a legislation such as this that's passed in other states and been signed into law has been struck down, and under current Supreme Court precedent, this would clearly be unconstitutional even without its vagueness. But an anticipated violation, I suppose if, and here's the scary thing, it could be like I rode crew with a woman who was 6 feet tall and had really broad shoulders. And so what if we're all in the lunchroom and we're in 8th grade and varsity crew was gonna start in 9th grade, and she says to people, well, I'm gonna go out for the crew team. Well, what if I'm like, I don't know, she's real tall and broad shouldered, and that might be an anticipated violation, so I should go file this grievance to kick off the process to try to ensure that she cannot try to go out for varsity crew on the girls' team. That might be an example.
I agree, that sounds like the type of situation. So wouldn't you say, just as a follow-up, that it's true that this bill basically allows parents and families to sue schools based on supposition, rumors,
Guesswork.
inference, and not based on
Guesswork, and so
any sort of reality?
That's right. So it further, not only just children who are transgender, but anyone who doesn't fit the very formulaic view or body type of what's more stereotypically associated with their gender could come under some scrutiny as well.
Thank you.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well, and I urge colleagues to vote against this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 16th to close the debate.
Mr. President, thank you. and for the time, and I know that this is a issue that is sensitive. But here's the other parts I would say. During the time that this bill has been formulated, I've heard from constituents in which one lady said, my daughter quits because she's not going to play against someone that is not like her in the sense that she is a female, because this person was larger, bigger, faster. And she says, my daughter's just going to quit. So as we look for rights of both sides, I think that's one of the things to look at. But the second thing is this, age. We divide by age. We believe that it would be wrong for a 16-year-old to play in the 8-year-old league. We do divisions within sports. So I would close with this. This bill is about fairness. It's simply not fair to force girls, biological girls, to compete against biological boys. And it's currently not fair to expect young women to endure the immense social pressure against them if they speak up for themselves. This bill is not excluding anyone. With the passage of this law, every child can still compete. It simply ensures that teams and individual sport competitiveness are fair for girls. That's why it's called Save Girls Sports. And we are encouraging more participation and not less. Thank you, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the senator from the 40th rise?
Mr. President, I move that we table Senate Bill 435. It's sloppily written and it was obviously brought forward prematurely.
Senator from the 40th has asked the question for this chamber to place on the table Senate Bill 435. All those in favor of placing that bill on the table, vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. For what purpose does the senator from the 28th rise? He waves. On the motion, the table Senate Bill 435, the yeas are 22, the nays are 34, and the motion has failed. We will now take up the measure. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection? The main question being ordered. The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 34, the nays are 22. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 505?
Senate Bill 505 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Sections 35-8-23, 38-3-181, and 46-5-138.2 of the OCGA relating to basic training course for communications officers, definitions relative to Emergency Communications Authority and Director defined, and training and instruction respectively, so as to require that 911 communications officers receive training in delivery of high-quality telephone cardiopulmonary resuscitation and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th to present Senate Bill 505.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, approximately 350,000 citizens experience heart attacks each and every year with a 10% survival rate. Many times the failure to survive is because those around them or close to them do not understand or know how to perform CPR. As we move to the society that we currently live in today, where our public safety and first responders are depleted because of lack of recruitment, retention, and increased response times, we feel that it's much more important to make sure that all of our 911 dispatchers, who receive approximately 99% of all emergency calls for service in the United States and here in Georgia, be trained to assist these citizens who are present when another citizen experiences a cardiac emergency. What this bill does is it requires that beginning on July 1st, 2023, that communication officers be required to successfully complete training in the delivery of high-quality TCPR in addition to basic training, so that when individuals reach out to their 911 center because another citizen or family member is experiencing a cardiac event, that these communication officers can intelligently guide the citizen through the practice of CPR. What we've also included in here is continuing education units so that our emergency responders can maintain their readiness and to update any of those who have failed to receive the proper training in the past. I would encourage passage of this legislation. It makes our communities much safer, and many other states have already adopted these practices and processes. And the other day, someone asked me about the importance of dispatchers in the full circle of first responders, and I will tell you, again, because of the numbers and the decreases in first responders, especially in law enforcement, that these 911 dispatchers are the unsung heroes in every agency throughout the state of Georgia. Because many nights when you're out there alone doing your job, the only backup you have is that individual on the other end of the phone or the other end of your radio. So I would respectfully request that each of you look favorably upon Senate Bill 505 and cast a vote. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield to any questions if there are any.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th with a question to your left.
President, Senator, do you yield?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Senator, is it not true that this month of February is Heart Health Month?
That is true.
Senator Yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not further true that Senator from the 34th is a heart attack survivor?
I believe she is. Yes, ma'am.
Senator Further Yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not further true that we all should be voting in favor of this bill because it does help save lives?
I wholeheartedly agree with the senator from the 34th.
One last question, if the senator would yield.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that I will be supporting your bill?
Yes, ma'am, I believe you will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th for a question. Back right.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Yes, I will, to my good friend.
Thank you. And I appreciate you bringing the bill forward. As a former county manager and folks that got to hire 911 dispatchers, one of the things that I do see as a potential problem on this is how do we deal with a dispatcher that doesn't have the certification? If you could address for me how you've got dispatchers and we got to fill seats. And if we can't fill those seats, that's a problem. And I can see a lot of times we bring a new dispatcher on, you may have some seniority people there, but if they're not certified, then we're filling the wrong seats. And if you would address that for me, please.
Yes, sir. This type of TCPR training is offered on multiple platforms. Not only is it offered in classrooms, but it's also offered on the World Wide Web by medical experts and others within the CPR community, American Red Cross and others. So any communications director at any 911 center throughout the state of Georgia will be able to take that new employee and get them trained and certified in this in TCPR.
Would you yield for one more question?
Absolutely.
How long of a process is it for a student to take this class and get certified?
The certification on TCPR is approximately 3 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes, sir, if there are any more questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 39th with a question.
Does the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, isn't it true that some of the call centers, 911 call centers in Georgia, already have this training and do this work and others do not?
It is absolutely true.
Does the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it further true that this telecommunicator CPR has been proven to increase the chance of survival of an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest by 51%?
Absolutely. Since the mouth had been taken away from this type of trainings, we've noticed the survival rates have actually increased because citizens aren't as hesitant to use the new techniques in saving lives.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. And that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well.